In this demonstration, I'm going to create an S3 bucket using PowerShell. Now, why would you want to do it this way? Because isn't it just easier to create the bucket using the web-based interface? Not necessarily. I mean, we can use the console. There are even some services that you might set up in AWS where it creates the bucket for you as part of that service creation. We can use the CLI, it can be done programmatically. But if you're familiar and comfortable with PowerShell, or maybe you want to automate it, because when you work at the command line, you can put things in a script, maybe even schedule it, or maybe you want to repeatedly create the same type of sandbox environment for testing. And so automating that at the command line, maybe using scripts, is very beneficial. So there's always a time and place for different methods of doing something. You just have to determine when it's the best fit. Automation is one of those cases where PowerShell might be the best fit. At any rate, I'm on an EC2 instance using a Windows AMI, an Amazon Machine Image, that already has AWS tools for PowerShell pre-installed. Let's verify this. I'm going to go ahead and type in get-module-list, and I'll use asterisk, AWS asterisk. -list means we want to get a list of all PowerShell modules installed on this machine, whether they're active in memory or not. And a PowerShell module, you'll recall, is a collection of related PowerShell commandlets. Think of it as a library. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Okay, so the AWS PowerShell module then is shown. So if I were to run get-command to get a list of PowerShell commandlets, but I'm going to scope it down using -module to the AWS PowerShell module. I'll pipe that to more to stop after the first screenful. You don't even need to use -module. You could run get-command, maybe asterisk S3 asterisk, and then we get all the S3 bucket related type of commandlets. Even filtering it further, maybe asterisk new asterisk S3. This is perfect. There it is, new -S3 bucket. Our goal here is to create an S3 bucket here in PowerShell. Now I'm just going to go ahead and run get-AWS credential-list profile detail. I want to make sure I'm authenticated. Okay, I've got a profile here called admin1, so I'll use initialize-AWS default configuration-profile name, and I'll specify admin1. Okay, so we are now authenticated to our AWS account from a previously specified access key and a matching secret key. So now we can proceed with new -S3 bucket. I'll specify -bucket name. You should be following naming convention standards, so you don't have random bucket names that are hard to trace. So assuming we're creating a bucket to store files related to an app, I'll give it an appropriate name. And I'll specify -region, in this case, US-East-1. And I'll press enter. Okay, it returns back the creation date and timestamp along with the bucket name. That's a good indication that things went our way. It succeeded. So we could run get-S3 bucket and just press enter. And they're all shown here. However, all I want to do is see the names. I don't want to see the date and timestamps. So what you can do as kind of a discovery commandlet in PowerShell is we bring up the previous command, get-S3 bucket. You can pipe that to get-member and then specify -type property. What I'm doing is saying, I want to see the properties of the returned output from executing get-S3 bucket. And the properties are bucket name and creation date. Okay, so how about I run get-S3 bucket, pipe to select and tell it I just want the bucket name. Okay, that's a little bit easier. I could use that previous command but modify it. Instead of select, what I could do is say where, a filter, open curly brace, $_ dot bucket name. $_ is a built-in placeholder variable in PowerShell. As you might imagine, when you run get-S3 bucket, it's returning a collection of buckets. So the way that you can loop through all of those buckets one at a time is using the built-in placeholder variable $_. It's like going through a for loop. And then, of course, I want to refer to the .bucket name property as we are going through each bucket. And what I want to do is make sure or check that it equals -eq and in quotes we'll put in our bucket name, app YHZ172, close quotes, close curly brace, enter. So we filtered out buckets so we're only seeing the one that we wanted. You could even take that a step further. Bringing up that previous command with the up arrow key, maybe you would pipe it to select because maybe all you want to see are the bucket names. You don't want to see anything else. There it is. So we know that it was successfully created here in PowerShell. Now you could also point directly to the bucket, meaning you could run get-s3 bucket and then dash bucket name. It's called app YHZ172 in our case. That would be another way to just point directly to it by name. And ultimately, we can also remove it. I'm going to run remove-s3 bucket, assuming we no longer need it, dash bucket name, once again, app YHZ172 in our particular case, enter. We didn't use force on the command line, so we're being asked to confirm indeed if this is what we want to do. Yes, press the letter Y, and there we go. So if I use one of the previous commands that we use to retrieve our bucket, it no longer returns anything because it's been deleted.